everyone? Welcome to another episode of EET, your watch right to bring you eat everything and entertainment. What a wonderful episode we got, entitled Home from Trigun Stampede, episode 8. In my overall opinion, this episode was great. Once again, we were able to see more things pulled out of the manga and brought into the second adaptation of Trigun. I am enjoying this because in the first adaptation, we only got one full flashback episode showing what happened on the Seed ship and why Vash and Knives were in the situation they were in, and the prejudice that Knives was facing at the hands of Brad. This was in the first adaptation, and why Vash sabotaged the Seed ship and why they crash landed on the planet to begin with. Now in this adaptation, Brad was the one giving Vash a hard time, so they still used this character but in a different way, which I do like. So the episode was good. We got to see why certain things happen, why Vash is the way he is, and the hardships that he went through after the Seed ship crash landed onto the planet of No Man's Land. And we got a look into what happened, just the main events during the first 5 years after the crash. And also we got another time skip because we got to see at the very end Vash being fully grown and looking the way he did in the first episode of Trigun Stampede. And we got to see, in his memory that he did catch up to Knives, and it can be assumed that he did lose the battle, of course, because he wound up also losing his left arm in the process. So we're going to get into this and see that this is good, and I'll bring you some predictions and where I think this series may be headed. So let's begin. Right away, the episode opens from the point of view of Rem and her using her recording device to record the twins' first birthday for both Vash and Knives. We get to learn right away that Vash needs to consume food the way humans does, but Knives does not. We also learn that Rem is a very doting mother towards the twins, and she considers herself very lucky to be able to raise both Knives and Vash. Another thing that we did learn from this is if you look at the appearance of both Knives and Vash, Vash is Knives' complete opposite. He doesn't need to consume human food the way Vash does. His eye color is different. His mole is on the opposite side. His haircut is to the opposite side of Vash. His personality is to the opposite side of Vash. And his convictions are also on the opposite side of Vash. So right away from the jump, just like I said in my previous video, Vash and Knives, well, I said it about Wolfwood and Vash, but you can also see it with Vash and Knives, that Vash and Knives are also yin and yang, complete opposites of one another. So after the crash, we get to see Knives and Vash. Knives leaves the crash site and Vash follows him, and you can see Knives sitting on top of one of the pieces of Ship 5 that have crash landed, or the escape pod or piece of Ship 5, and he's laughing maniacally and saying that Vash is his accomplice because he gave him the codes to change everything and what happened. What I want to see is, I know what happened in the adaptation in the manga, but I want to see how Trigun Stampede has their own adaptation to why as to why Knives did this. In the first adaptation, and we found out the reason why Knives did this is because of the prejudice that Brad had towards him. And we could see some of that prejudice later on in this episode, where some of the characters that were yet to be named were showing prejudice against Vash because he was a plant. And I want them to show that Knives was not just doing it to do it, because he had general hatred towards humanity just because the way they treated him. And I hope they follow up through with that one on Trigun Stampede. Vash runs away from Knives, and he trips over something, and it winds up being one of the crew members who was dying, and he shakes his foot loose and runs away because he is scared. And you can see literally Vash's conviction, both spiritually and in his mind, being brought to the landscape for the viewer to see his inner turmoil as to what happened to all the residents being just placed on the screen for us to see his descent into his own personal darkness, because he feels personally responsible for Knives' actions. So Vash wakes up where a group of men found him alive, and he examined, and they knew he was a plant because they could see the design of the lines inside of the iris of his pupil, and they knew he was a plant because he still was able to survive. He meets with 2 members of the Ship 3 crew, Luida, who is the leader, and Brad, which that was the gentleman I was speaking about that showed a lot of hatred towards Knives in the first adaptation. And they interview him, and they find out that, Vash says he can't produce anything the way other plants do. And they find the black box, and they're not able to decipher at first what happened to Ship 5. But Vash gives Rem's name and say that, that was the one who raised him and Knives, but he does lie and says that Knives is dead when he is not. Now we're going to move everything along, but after some time and after some interviewing and them not quite trusting Vash, because you can still see they was in handcuffs, they're able to recover some of Rem's personal items and give them to Vash, and he begins to count the number of days that he was in there. After some time, the electricity plant malfunctions, and Vash is able to hear that through like a high-pitched scream in his ear, and Luida eventually begins to trust him. He goes and he's able to heal the plant so the electricity plant doesn't break down, and it saves a lot of human lives. And afterwards they begin to trust Vash, and they give him his own room. And then we get to see not quite a montage, but some time of Vash and Brad over the next 5 years head out to different derelict ships across the planet of No Man's Land, and Vash is helping out the human race by healing various plants that are in trouble. Now, after some time this goes on, we get to see that Vash is presented with his iconic red geranium colored coat, and he's appreciative of it. Of course, them being in the situation that they're being, he said he's really appreciative of it because new clothes are hard to get given the situation that they're in. Brad, after some time, does begin to trust Vash, by him giving him the water bottle and just speaking with him. And after 5 years, Brad is able to decipher what's on the black box, and they find out that Knives is alive and Vash was lying. Vash overhears Luida and Brad about what to do with him and why he lied, and Brad speculates he wasn't on the side of humanity. Vash leaves and leaves a note behind the picture frame stating that he was sorry and he will atone for what Knives did. We see some time has passed, and Vash is able to hear another high-pitched noise, which is an indication that a plant is in trouble. While he was in the desert, he eventually meets up with Knives again, and then after we see a close-up of a young Knives, we see Vash waking up back in his old room. When Vash awakes, we see that he is fully grown, just like we see him in the second adaptation, Trigun Stampede, fully grown like we did see him in the first episode. And we see that the prosthetic arm is already attached to him, showing that it was a good passage of time before Lueda and Brad was able to locate Knives. It can be speculated and easy to tell that Vash lost that first battle, and he also lost his left arm during that battle, and they were able to finally locate him, and the story is going to continue from there. Now, I will say this, I think the overall tone of this, it has gotten much better. And if I haven't mentioned this before, I'll mention it now, that Yashiro Naito is involved. The creator of Trigun is involved and has been involved with the entire process since they began 5 years ago of this, and it does show. So I know this is not the first adaptation, but since Yashiro Naito is involved, that you can rest easy. Now, I will say this, in my opinion, before I close this video, this is what I think. I think that Trigun Stampede is a prequel and a sequel of the first adaptation. And I'm going to tell you why. If you've been paying attention to the first 8 episodes, the incident in July City has not happened yet. In the first adaptation of Trigun, it picks up after that incident has happened. It has not happened yet. And also, we've only seen Vash use that one weapon. And if you look at that one weapon close enough, we can see that it is not the same caliber. It's not, the gun looks somewhat the same, but it's not the same weapon. It looks like it's small. It looks like it fires like a smaller caliber of ordnance. So given that this is the prequel that we're watching right here, this is the prequel that we're watching, and I think that it's going to build up to what happens in the incident in July, and then afterwards we're going to see more familiar tones from the first adaptation, and then that's going to put a lot of unease for the rest of the fans to rest. But this is really good, because I really do hope if they get more seasons for this, because if they do, we get to see more stuff that is familiar from the first adaptation in the manga, and also we get to see some of the things that the first adaptation had to leave out just because of time constraints, being restricted to a certain number of episodes. So I definitely want to see more of the story of Trigun flushed out, and we're going to get that, as long as this adaptation does well. And if you want to see more, give the show a chance and watch it. And also, if you have not, please, I'm telling you, you have to read the manga. If you read the manga, you will be more appreciative of what they're doing in Trigun Stampede. Because right now, we're 8 episodes in. And if you compare it, Trigun Stampede, to the first episode of the first adaptation with the first 8 episodes, you can already see that the second adaptation has taken way more from the manga than the first adaptation has. So you have to read the manga to be more appreciative of this show. Like I said, only 8 episodes in, but I can say this, it has already reached the goal that you should read the manga. That is the goal of anime, to get you to read the manga, because they promote one another, and it has reached that goal, in my opinion. Now, I'm looking forward to this because I want to see the rest of the story flushed out, and I also want confirmation on my prediction that the young lady that we see with Priest William is in fact another independent, what they call it. And I also want to know her name, but like I said, it's been a long time since I read the manga, and I'm sure I could, peruse the pages again, but I'm not going to do that. It's been a couple years since I read the manga. I want to be surprised all over again. So I am going to refrain from reading the manga again, and I want to see how they bring all the adaptations together. And then after they finish closing up this first season of Trigun Stampede, I'm going to read some more back into the manga to refresh my memory. But out of the things that I do remember when I read it, that they have definitely taken more out of the manga, and I can't wait to see more because I want this entire story flushed out. It's good. It's getting good so far. It's getting good, and I can't wait to see how they do the July incident, because remember, we only got to see like a small tidbit. It was, remember, I think if I remember from the first adaptation, they showed a small segment of what happened when Knives took control of Vash's angel arms and made him blow up the city of July, and it was in black and white. I want to see that flushed out more the way the manga did it, and show it on an updated updated anime, and it can be a really good turn. It could be a really good thing, not a turning point. It could be a really big thing that draws more people into watching Trigun Stampede, and I guarantee after that happens, then people will backtrack, watch it from the beginning, and then I'm just speculating that their minds will change and they'll be like, oh, it started slow in the beginning, but then it picked up, and I'm glad it did. Yeah, the first 2 episodes, I'm telling you, they were kind of shaky, but I think it's gonna all come together. One other quick note, like I'm saying, you see how they use Brad differently than what they did in the first adaptation. I think they're going to do the same thing with Millie. I think we're going to see Millie again, and I'm telling you now, I'm making that's one of my predictions I made in my earlier videos. I think that Millie is going to be Roberto's daughter. I think that's what's going to happen. I'll put this out there now. I'll put this out there now. If they do this thing that when July gets destroyed, and that's going to be the end of the first season, I think Roberto is going to die during that incident. Vash is going to feel guilty, and he's going to disappear, and we're going to see him come back, and Millie is going, not Millie, Marrow's going to be traveling around, and when Marrow's traveling around, she's going to be more grizzled and jaded like how Roberto was, because she experienced some things, and then she's going to be joined by Millie Thompson so they can get the rest of the story out there. Now, me adding that might be Roberto's daughter might be a bit of a stretch. She might not be Roberto's daughter, but I think if she's not Roberto's daughter, Millie Thompson will be Meryl Streep's new partner after Roberto dies or gets gravely injured and is unable to travel anymore after the July incident. So that's all I have for that one. Let's start a conversation in the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe if you feel like it. Give the manga a read. You won't be disappointed. Take care, everybody.